Hello again, algebra students. We're going to spend another day talking about slope. Promise this video is going to be shorter than the last one. When we talk about slope, remember, we're talking about how steep a line is and the direction. Is it going uphill? Is it going downhill? Is it horizontal or vertical? Change in y over the change in x is really what we're looking for. We've got a slope formula that we use for this. We also talk about it in terms of rise over run. So we go up 3, that's the rise, and then the run is sideways 2. So here's Mr. Slope Guy again. You may want to, if you don't know what Mr. Slope Guy looks like, pause the video, jot it down in your notes, because that is really going to be helpful when you're trying to recognize kinds of slope. So all the different ways that we talk about finding slope. Rise over run, that's what we do when we've got a graph. We're going to count. How far do you go up? How far do you go sideways? How far do you go down? Also could work for the rise, because then it would be a negative. Change in y over the change in x, we're just looking for how much you go up and down, that's the change in y, how much you go sideways, that's the change in x. And then we've got our slope formula, where we subtract the y's on the top and the x's on the bottom. If I have graphs and we're going to count the slope, so the one that we're going to be using here, instead of the actual slope formula, we're going to be looking at rise over run. So number 1 does have a negative slope. It's going downhill. So I'm going to go down 2. And I'm going to go sideways 2 to get from one point to the other point. As long as you go up and down first, then you're always going to be moving to the right, so you don't have to worry about if the denominator is going to be a negative. So negative 2 over 2 is going to give me a slope of negative 1 when I simplify it. Yesterday we talked about not giving mixed numbers, not giving decimals. However, when I do this, when I simplify it, it's okay to get a whole number, because we all know that whole numbers can be written as fractions also. So I could go from this first point down 1 and over 1, and we get to another point. Number 2 has a positive slope. It's going uphill. So I'm going to go up 2, and I'm going to go sideways. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 over 4 can be simplified. That's going to be 1/2, which means I could have gone up 1 and over 2, and right there's another point. Or I could continue that, go up 1 over 2, get another point. Up 1 over 2, get another point. For number 3, it's a negative slope again. I'm going to be moving down 3 and over 2. So my slope is going to be a negative 3 over 2. For number 4, positive slope again. This time I'm going to move up 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to move sideways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That doesn't simplify, so that one's just done. For these 4 problems, now that I don't have a graph, again, I am not going to take the time to graph these. I am just going to use the slope formula. And the slope formula, remember, is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So I'm going to be subtracting the y's on the top, subtracting the x's on the bottom. So I'll do a problem where I label everything just like we have in the formula, and then I'm going to do some problems where we use kind of my shortcut. So in number 1, we have an x and a y in every ordered pair. And then you're going to label one of the ordered pairs with 1s and one of the ordered pairs with 2s. Remember, it doesn't really matter which one's which. So my y sub 2 would be negative 11, and my y sub 1 is 17. My x sub 2 is 8, and my x sub 1 is negative 4. Remember, it's always subtraction, so you might have minus a negative. And then we'll have to do a cube change on both of those. So negative 11 and negative 17 is going to be negative 28, and 8 plus 4 is going to be 12. Well, that can simplify, right? We don't want it to be a mixed number, but I could simplify that. I could divide them both by 4, and I would get negative 7 over 3. For number 2, instead of labeling everything, Well, actually, I'm going to do one more where I label, but I'm going to switch around my X1 and Y1 with my X2 and Y2. So this time, when I label my X's and Y's, in the first example, I used my first order pairs were my 1s. I'm going to make them my 2s this time. Personally, when I do this, I kind of, if I'm not worried about which numbers go first, I kind of like to label it this way because in my formula, the y sub 2's go first. So it's a little easier for me to move this and say, well, my y sub 2 would be that first one that I see, which is a -7, minus my y sub 1, which is a -4. And then on the bottom, x sub 2 is going to be 7 minus 11. Keep change. So I'm going to get that m is -3 over -4. But if I have a negative over a negative, that turns into a positive. For number 3, when I subtract my y's, this time I'm going to do this again like I did yesterday. As long as I keep my y's on the top, x's on the bottom, and keep the same order, it's fine. So I'm going to start with, I don't know, I guess this ordered pair. So I'm going to start with my 4, and that gets connected to my -5. And on the bottom, then I have to start with the -13, and that's connected to my -1. So when I do my keep change on all of that, I'll have 9 on the top and -12 on the bottom. So I know it's going to be a negative answer. I don't usually keep that negative in the denominator. I kind of pull it out in front. And I can divide both of those by 3. So I'm going to get -3/4. And for the last one, y's on the top. Let's go 13 minus 12. And then in the bottom, you should be noticing, we've got a -16 minus a -16. I'm going to get 1 over 0, but that's not okay. I can't have a 0 in the denominator. That's an undefined fraction. So it's an undefined slope. That's like Mr. Slope Guy's nose. So hopefully that was enough of a review. Today's worksheet is going to have, again, like yesterday, some problems where you have to count the slope and some problems where you're going to use the formula to find slopes. Make sure you check your answers with the answer key in Schoology and then take the formative quiz when you're all done. Let me know if you need any help.